Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or whatever daytime you're having at the moment. Welcome to Takeaway English class, to the channel where English is learned through logic. Because grammar becomes much easier when we understand the reason behind it, the logic behind it. And if you are just joining, hi there, welcome to Takeaway English channel. Here's your teacher Mary. I hope our classes will help you improve your English and support you on your learning journey. Right now we are learning relative clauses. One of the topics that students often find confusing. But don't worry, step by step we are going to break everything down, make it simple, practice together and understand the logic behind it all. Okay? And of course, if you are just joining and struggle to understand how relative clauses work, if you want to know all about relative clauses, on my YouTube channel, you can find all the videos, all the recorded live lessons where I explain everything from the beginning. By the way, on my Telegram channel, we already started talking about phrasal verbs, some idioms. I uploaded there some dialogues about relative clauses and much more. So you can always join my Telegram channel where you can practice regularly. Now, today we are going to talk about that, the king of defining relative clauses, the king, right? The king of defining relative clauses. Yesterday we talked about whose, right? Whose. There's only one relative word that describes possession when something belongs to someone. We can use whose for people, animals, and things, right? Whose is the easiest relative word because it doesn't have any other rules that we should follow, right? I told you that when we talk about possession, when something belongs to someone, we use whose. We cannot replace it with that or with the zero relative, right? If we need whose, if we talk about possession, we use whose. That's it. Now, unlike whose, which has a few rules to follow that we learned yesterday, that is much more flexible and it can be used in many different ways. and it appears in quite a few structures. During our previous live lessons, we learned that in casual, everyday situations, we often use that. Instead of who, instead of whom, instead of which, instead of where, when, why, we can use that, right? In casual, everyday situations, right? So now, as you can see, that is the main figure, the king of the defining relative clauses. And if you want to sound natural, you can replace almost all the relative pronouns with that, right? So the relative word that is more flexible. That is, we can replace almost all the relative words with that. The only one exception is whose, right? We cannot replace whose with that. If we want to talk about possession or when something belongs to someone, we use whose. If we need whose, we use whose. That's it. Okay? So let's talk about that and do a quick recap how we can use that when we can replace who, whom, and the other relative words with that, right? So, for example, starting with who. Can we replace who with that? Yes, we can. So, for example, we can say, the man who called me. Who called me. Instead, we can say, the man that called me. Right? The man that called me. Both of them are correct. Who is more formal, whereas that can be used in casual, in everyday situations, right? Just let me know, guys, if you can hear me clearly and see everything properly, okay? Okay, so again, instead of who, we can't use that, right? In casual situations. Now, whom. Can we use that instead of whom? Can we use that instead of whom and say the girl whom I met? Whom I met. The girl whom I met. Yes, we can, right? The girl that I met is perfectly correct. In casual situations, we can use that instead of whom, right? All of these all of these sentences are correct. What about which? Can we use that instead of which? For example, the book which I bought. Can we use that instead of which? Yes, we can, right? Again, the book that I bought. Perfectly correct, right? What about the relative word where? For example, the park where we play, for example. Can I use that instead of where? Yes, I can. However, with where, we should be careful because when we use that instead of where, all we need to do is we add preposition, right? So instead of where, of course, we can use that, but all we need to do is just use preposition in at the end of the relative clause. So instead of saying, the park, or this is a park, this is a park. So all we need to do is just put the preposition at the end of the relative clause. And instead of saying this is the park where we play every day, for example, we can say this is the park that we play in. Right? So when we use that instead of where, we need preposition in, at, on, right? Now, what about when? Can we use that instead of when? Of course we can. The day when we first met. And of course, we can use that instead of when. And instead of saying, hi, Emel, thank you for the answer. Yeah, we can, right? When? The day when we first met. Instead of saying the day when we first met, we can say the day that. The day that we first met. Okay. And finally, why? For example, the reason why he left, we can say the reason that he left. The reason that he left. Well, to be honest, with where, when, and why, it's better if you use where, when, why instead of that. Okay? However, that works perfectly, and you can use that instead of all the relative words, meaning who, whom, which, where, when, and why, right? That's why I call that the king of defining relative clauses. And of course, again, the only exception is whose, right? Whose. When we need whose, we use whose. We cannot use that instead of whose, right? Okay. Everything's clear, right? When it comes to the king of defining relative clauses. We had many live lessons related to that. There are lots of recorded live lessons on YouTube where we talked about that, where we talked about all the relative words, right? And again, we know that that can be used sorry, what preposition? Okay. You mean with when we use that instead of when, right? Good news, guys. When we use that instead of when, we don't use preposition. The only exception is where, okay? When we use that instead of where, we need preposition. When we use that instead of when, we don't need preposition. When we use why, when we use that instead of why, that's no preposition, okay? The only exception is where. That's why I tell you that be careful with where, right? Because it's only relative adverb. So, which, whom, who, that, or whose are relative pronouns, guys. Where, when, and why are relative adverbs. They describe place, time, or reasons, right? However, when we use that instead of where, we need preposition. The only exception is relative adverb where. When we use that instead of where, we need preposition. With other words, we don't need it. Okay? Now you might be thinking, what if we know that when there is the zero relative pronoun, we know that when we skip these words, for example, this is the park, I play in every day, right? We need preposition. So when we use the zero relative pronoun, then we need prepositions with when and with why and with where, of course. Okay, we need prepositions when we use the zero relative pronoun, but when we just use that instead of these words, the preposition is needed only with where. Okay, with the zero pronoun we always need preposition. Okay, well, it depends on the verb, of course. Okay, so now, did you know that the relative word that is also commonly used with superlatives? Superlatives. Now, what are superlatives? So, superlatives plus that. Superlatives plus that. What are superlatives? Can someone tell me? What are superlatives in English? To express the most. Thank you, Amal. Exactly. Superlatives, they are words we use when something or someone is exceptional, unparalleled, or stands above all others, right? Commonly used superlatives are best or worst or most beautiful. For example, what else? Most expensive, and so on, right? These are superlatives. They are words we use when something or someone is exceptional or stands above all others, right? For example, he is the best man. He's the best man. Right? Or we can say she is the most attractive woman. Okay? He's a good man. Okay, so if we want to say that someone or something is exceptional, unparalleled, or stand above all others, we usually use words such as best, worst, most, and so on, right? Or maybe this is the most expensive car. So words like best, worst, least, most, or adjectives ending in ast, adjectives ending in ast, okay, often go well together with defining relative clauses. Thank you, Professor. Good, better, and best, right? The third one is superlative, best, right? He's the best, exactly. Now, adjectives ending with in est or these superlatives often go well together with defining relative clauses because we usually need extra information. Okay? If I only say he's the best person, listener may naturally think the best person in what way? Well, there's nothing wrong if you just say he's the best man. The sentence is correct. He's the best man. Okay? It's grammatically correct. The listener understands it. The issue is not grammar. It's that the meaning may feel too general or not specific enough. It just listeners often expect extra information because they naturally wonder best in what way, among whom, where, for whom, okay? So superlatives often need extra information, and one common way to add that information is with the defining relative clauses. Okay? For example, he is the best man that let's say I have ever known. Okay? We have superlative, he's the best man. We have relative word that, and then we have relative clause, I have ever known. Okay? So here, the defining relative gives the listener more important information. It helps them understand why someone is the best, worst, or biggest, or something. Okay? It helps compare something with all our past experiences. This information tells the listener all my experience until now. Okay? Maybe I've known lots of men in my life, but this man is the best I've ever known. Okay? This information shows my past experience to the listener. Okay? Usually superlatives with that and the relative clauses. Yeah, of course we can. Sometimes we can just skip these that. This becomes then the zero relative pronoun, right? People who joined my previous classes, they already know about the zero relative pronoun when we can skip these words, right? Because we are often lazy when we speak, and sometimes we remove some words, but it doesn't mean that we can remove words whenever we want. We should follow some rules, right? And of course, we already know, guys, that these words already tells us that we can skip that, right? Because we have pronoun. And we already know when there is a pronoun, we can always remove these words to sound even more natural and fluent, right? So we are just talking about the when and how the relative word that can be used. Okay. Good morning, Dana. How are you, sweetie? Okay, so yeah, and the structure usually goes like this: superlatives, superlatives. Then comes that, and after that, good, I missed the topic of whose yesterday. Well, it was a short video because whose doesn't have many rules, okay? However, no worries. Do you have my Telegram channel? Because it doesn't have many rules. I didn't upload it to my YouTube. However, on my Telegram, I uploaded the page related to the relative word whose, the page from this book. It's on my Telegram channel. And not only about whose, I upload the dialogues about relative clauses, some phrasal verbs, some idioms, some grammar tips, and much more. You can always ask me something if you, I don't know, if you, maybe you don't understand something, you can always ask me there on Telegram, okay? Yes, Amal, it's completely free. All you need to do, just, well, you can, of course, go to my TikTok channel and find my Telegram channel there in my profile, or you can just send me a message on TikTok, okay? On TikTok, DM me, direct message with the word Telegram, okay? So after the live lesson, I'll send you the thing, you know, I don't want to say those words because TikTok became very sensitive to some words and sends me restrictions. Thank you for the rose. Thank you guys for the likes, for the shares, and for the follows. That means a lot to me. Okay. Yeah, so Superlatives plus that. So first comes what are superlatives? He's the best, the worst, the most, right? First come those words. Then we use that. And after that, usually we use phrases such as I've ever. This means I have ever, right? Or I have ever known, or seen, or watched. Well, if you know how to use present perfect, you know that with present perfect we usually use the third form of the verb, right? See, so, seen, go, went, gone, and so on, right? Because when we talk about our experience, we use present perfect, right? So here, defining relative clause talks about our past experience. He is the best man that I have ever known, right? One more example. This is the best movie that I've ever watched. Okay, so of course we can say only this sentence. This is the best movie. It's grammatically correct. But to give more information to the listener, maybe about our experience, then we add that I've ever watched, so the listener understands our experience, okay? It helps us compare something like a movie with all our past experience. It's not a bus, it's best. This is the best movie. Okay? Again, there's nothing wrong with this sentence if we just say, this is the best movie. Of course you can. Okay? But again, it helps us compare something with all our past experience. Is it Vicente Sebastian, right? Vicente. This is the best movie I have ever watched, right? Because usually when we talk about our experience, our past experience, maybe we usually use present perfect. Okay, so when we say I got it, no worries. When we say I it's a contraction of I have, right? That means we use present perfect. So we should always use the third form, right? The third form of the verb. Watched, right? Watched. Watched. I have watched. Can you say this is the best movie I've ever watched? So then we need the third form of the verb. I have ever watched. If you are saying that if we can remove that, of course we can, right? First of all, we know the rule because when we have pronoun right next to the relative word, we can use the zero relative pronoun and remove these words, right? And instead we can say, this is the best movie I've ever watched. That's correct. Or you can say, this is the best movie that I've ever watched. However, guys, when we talk about our experience, for example, I've ever seen, I've ever watched, I've ever met, I've ever had, I've ever known, when we talk about our experience, sometimes about our past experience, we use present perfect. Present perfect, right? Present perfect. That is, we need helping verb have and the third form of the verb with regular verbs, that is watch, watched, watched, with irregular verbs, these are go, went, gone, or eat, ate, eaten, etc. Okay? But when it comes to that, of course, you can remove that. Okay? Now, you can sometimes hear also who or which with superlatives, okay? Sometimes you can usually who, not which, okay? We can sometimes use who, okay? However, with superlatives, that is usually preferred, especially in everyday English. We use that, okay? We don't use whose, where, when, why, whom, etc. With superlatives, we usually use that and sometimes who, okay? So again, we already know that that is usually used with phrases such as that I've ever seen, I've ever watched, I've ever known, I've ever had, when talking about our experience. Okay? For example, she's the funniest person that I've ever met. Okay? We talk about our experience. Now, where we can use who. For example, superlatives plus when superlative, when we describe a person in a group, okay, who is common. So when we describe, when describing someone in a group, we use who. For example, he is the smartest student who studies here. Who studies here? Can't see a sign. Yesterday's, thank you for the question, Kate. Is it Kate? Well, yesterday we talked about whose. It was a really short video, so I didn't upload it on YouTube. However, if you have my Telegram channel, I uploaded the page from the book that explains everything about the relative word whose. Okay, whose. We talked about whose. Where is it? Yeah, whose. We talked about whose. And you can find this page on my Telegram. And not only this page, there I upload some dialogues about relative clauses, some daily phrasal verbs, idioms, and of course, sometimes you can ask me a question if you don't understand something, and of course, chat with other learners. And of course, it's completely free, guys. So, he's the smartest student who studies here. Now we use who. Why? Because we compare one person with others. Okay? We describe a person in a group. Or for example, she is the youngest employee who works in our company. Now I use who. Okay, I describe a person in a group. Okay, but even in this case, people in casual, in everyday situations use that instead of who. Okay, so with superlatives, we usually use that. It's a preferred relative word when it comes to the superlatives, okay? You mean, Nana, you mean he is the smartest student who studies here. If we say, for example, we have like group of people, When we have group of people, then of course we don't say studies and say study, right? For example, the the um, the smartest students who study here. Okay. These are the smartest students who study here. Exactly. Subject-object agreement, right? Okay. So again, this is the best movie in the world, the best movie this year that I have ever seen. So it adds extra or additional information about his experience, right? The defining relative clause. Or he's the most talented actor that I've ever seen. We use that instead of who. This is the worst coffee that I've ever tasted instead of which. So you can see that that is used for people, animals, places, things when it comes to the superlatives. That's why I like to call that the king of defining relative clauses, okay? Exercise 28. Yeah. So this week, guys, after tomorrow, we are going to talk about stranded prepositions, preposition stranding in relative clause, and phrasal verbs in relative clauses. Okay, phrasal verbs in relative clauses, and we should practice all the relative words with example sentences starting from A1 to B2. Okay, I'll provide some examples and you should turn them into A2, B1 and B2 sentences. Okay. And we are going to talk about how we can build questions or negatives with relative clauses. So from the next week, we can start learning non-defining relative clauses, okay? And just wanted to tell you guys, tomorrow I'm off. And our next lesson will be after tomorrow, okay? However, if you are on my Telegram, you can always practice them. I'm going to upload exercises from the book the dialogues, phrasal verbs, etc. And of course, notify you about my follow-up next live lesson, my live lessons schedule, etc. So, exercise 28, right? Exercise 28. Okay, guys, just 2 minutes break and I'll be back in 2 minutes. Bear with, I'll be back in no time so we can do some exercises, okay? Okay, I'm back. Let's start from the beginning. When we can replace a relative pronouns with that, okay? Combine the two sentences into one using where, when, or why. The relative adverb replaces the prepositional phrase like in that place or for that reason, right? So do not include the preposition in your new sentence. For example, this is the library. I study in this library. This is the library where I study, right? Or I remember the day. We graduated on that day. I remember the day when we graduated. Or I don't know the reason. He's angry for that reason. I don't know the reason why he's angry. So these short sentences, again, we talk like that when we start learning a new language, right? We use short, separate sentences. So relative words such as where, when, or why help us turn short sentences into one longer sentence to sound more natural and fluent, right? Now you should combine these two sentences, turn them into one longer sentence using relative words where, when, or why. Okay, that is the hospital. My sister works at that hospital. Can someone turn this sentence into one using relative words where, when, or why? Anyone? Tesla Doina, where excellent. In this sentence, we can use where. Can someone provide full sentence using where and combine these two sentences into one longer sentence? Oh, excellent, Felix. That is the hospital where my sister works. Very well done. That is the hospital where my sister works. Or in which, at which, or in which, right? Depending on the context. So the where my sister works at. Well, built different. When we use where, we don't need preposition, okay? Because where equals place and preposition, okay? So we use only where. No worries. Sota, is it Sota said in which? Yes, we use which in very formal situations, right? In formal speaking or writing or in emails, right? We use which, and that's perfectly correct. However, with the hospital, guys, at the hospital, we usually mean when we work there or when we visit someone, right? When we are in the hospital, We are there as a patient, okay? So if we talk about that someone works there, or when we visit someone, we use at the hospital, okay? And again, when we use where, we don't need preposition. So that is the hospital where my sister works. Or of course, as Sota said, at which, we can use which, of course, but it's formal, okay? It's very formal. Still grammatically correct, right? Number 2, 2020 was the year the world changed in that year. Excellent. Sota, right? When the world changed. Very well done. 2020 was the year when the world changed. Thank you, Felix. 2020 was the year when the world changed, right? Number 3, tell me the reason you are late for that reason. The reason why, right? With reasons, we use relative word why. Tell me the reason why you are late. Excellent, Felix. Thank you. Tell me the reason why you are late. Thank you, Mel. Tell me the reason why you are late, right? Number 4, this is the room. We hold the meetings in this room. Where exactly? Thank you, Marco. Thank you, Felix. Where, right? This is the room. Do you know the city where Marco lives? So this is the room where we hold the meetings, right? Do you know the city? Marco lives in that city. Do you know the city where Marco lives? Excellent. This is the room where we hold the meetings. Excellent, Amal. I'm lazy to type. Ah, do you know the city where Marco lives? Marco lives. You're welcome, Marco. How to answer number 5? I don't know. It depends where Marco lives. Can you tell us, Marco, where do you live? Number 6. Summer is the season. It is very hot in that season. Thank you, Mal. Summer is the season when it's very hot. Summer is the season when it's very hot, right? In that season, exactly. Summer is the season when it's very hot, right? Summer is the season where, well, where it describes place. So summer is the season, it's time, right? So we need when. Summer is the season when it's very hot, right? Summer is the season that when it's very hot. Thank you, Felix. Summer is the season when it's very hot. Okay. This is the office. I work in this office. This is the office where I work. This is the office where I work. And now, can you see, Nana, when we want to describe place, yes, we use where, right? But when we describe time, we use when. This is the office where I work. Thank you, Nana Sam. This is the office where I work. Thank you, Silai. This is the office where I work. Sunday is the day I relax on that day. When I relax, right? When I relax. Amal, you don't need on, because when we use when, it describes preposition and time, right? So we don't need on. We can just say Sunday is the day when I relax. Thank you, Nana. Sunday is the day. Nana Sam, when I relax. Okay, excellent, Amal. So later in the Sunday is the day when I relax. And no worries. Excellent. Sunday. is the day when I relax. Or, of course, if you want to sound even more fluent, we know that we can remove these words, but we also know, especially with the where, because when we use the zero relative, we should change the structure and add preposition, right? Depending on the reason why she left. I don't know the reason why she left. Yeah, I don't know the reason why she left, right? Why she left. Number 10, that is the restaurant. We met at that restaurant. I don't know the reason why she left. Thank you, Nana Sam. Thank you, Nana. That is the restaurant. We met at that restaurant. That is the restaurant where we met. Excellent. That is the restaurant where we met. In 1969, sorry, was the year a man walked on the moon in that year. That is the restaurant where we met. Thank you, Amal. 1969 was the year a man walked on the moon in that year. I'm sorry, let me just zoom in. Can you see it now, CLI? This one. Okay, so 1969 was the year a man walked on the moon in that year. Okay, no, exactly, thank you. When, right? Because we describe 1969, when a man walked on the moon. Thank you, Nordic. 1969 was the year when a man walked on the moon. Walked on the moon. Excellent. 1969 was the year when a man walked on the moon. Great. Okay, what do we have here? Preposition, clean, and these sentences have extra words. Okay. Number 26. These sentences have extra words that we don't need. Words like where, when, and why already include the preposition, like in, on, at, or for. So we already know that these prepositions equal place or time or reason and preposition, okay? Okay, find and cross out the extra preposition. For example, the house where I live in is very old. Incorrect, right? I remember the day when we first met on. I remember the day when we first met on. Okay? No, I don't remember. Sorry, what do you mean, Nana? I remember the day when we first met, right? We don't need extra preposition here. Why? Because, again, guys, when we use words such as when, where, or why equal place and preposition, time and preposition, time and preposition, place and preposition, why, reason and preposition. That is, when we have these words, we don't need prepositions because these words already mean prepositions that we need for that place or for that time or for that reason. It's like in normal sentence, if you say, for example, I live in that house. Do we use two prepositions? Do we say I live in that house? We don't use two prepositions, right? One is enough in normal sentences. Since where already equals preposition, it already means in the park, in the place, in the house, at work or at the hospital. It already means describes preposition and the place. So when we use these words, we don't need prepositions anymore, okay? Prepositions such as with where and when usually are at, on, in, etc. With why, it's usually for. So when we use why, we don't need preposition for anymore because it already replaces preposition and the reason, okay? The same goes with where and why, when. So let's have a look at the example number 2. I remember the day. We already have when. It already means on that day. On that day. So we don't need another preposition here. Because in normal sentence, it would be, I remember the day we met on that day, if I used two prepositions. We don't use two prepositions, right? The same goes here. When I have when, I don't need on. Okay, so this is the extra preposition, and we don't need this extra preposition when we have when. Is it clear for everybody? Number 3, the reason why I'm calling for is to ask for help. Very well done, Amal. Excellent. Because here we have 2, 4, and I thought you would remove this one as well. Which wouldn't be correct, right? Because it isn't relative clause. We should remove only this one, right? Great. The reason why I'm calling is to ask for help. Excellent, Nana. Very well done. The reason why I'm calling is to ask for help. Right? Number 4. This is the park where we played soccer at. Thank you, Nana Sam. Tesla doing at, right? Extra preposition that we don't need. This is the park where we played soccer. Very well done. Type page. Of course I can. Can you see it? Guys, since I'm off tomorrow, okay, live lesson will be after tomorrow. That is on, is it on, no, Thursday. On Thursday, I can upload this page on my Telegram. So you can have a look or practice everything we have learned today, okay, on my Telegram. So again, all you need to do, just send me a message with the word Telegram DM on TikTok. It's completely free. Will you upload this on YouTube, teacher? I definitely will. Today I'll upload this, this live lesson on my YouTube. So you can rewatch this live lesson and then go to my Telegram and do some exercises there. And do teach any other language. I can speak other languages, but I don't teach them. No worries, Kate. Is it Katie? You're very welcome. Hamed, could you get your Telegram name, please? Oh, well, all you need to do is just, you can go to my profile, TikTok profile. There you can find my Telegram. Or you can just send me a message on TikTok with the word Telegram. And I'll send you my channel, okay? With the word Telegram. And again, it's completely free. And of course, today I'm going to upload dialogue about superlatives and that. Okay? What languages, if you don't mind to share? Well, I don't mind. Well, I speak Italian, Russian, Georgian, German, English, and I'd like to learn Japanese. How about Arabic? I am Jean Nathan. Is it Natage? However, guys, during the live lesson, we talk only in English, right? Okay, let's carry on with exercise 26. Number 5. Is there a reason why the shop is closed for? What do you think? Is there a reason why the shop is closed for? Excellent, Nana. Excellent, Nata, right? G, Nata G. Why? We need why, right? But do we have extra preposition in the sentence? For, right? Well done, Mel. Well done, Nana. Is there a reason why the shop is closed, right? Number 6. Saturday is the day when I go to the gym on. Are you Georgian? Yes, I am. Is there a reason why the shop is closed? Is there a reason why the shop is Saturday? Is the day when I go to the gym? Well done, Amal. When, right? Saturday is the day when I go to the gym. But do we have extra preposition that we don't need in this sentence? Can we add preposition on at the end? Thank you to Tisha Terefa. On, right? On. We don't need on. When I go to the gym. Excellent. Nana, Amal, you are doing great. Number 7. The hotel where we stayed in was very expensive. The hotel where we stayed was very expensive. Excellent, Amel, sorry. Expensive, we stayed. We don't need extra preposition. The hotel where we stayed was very expensive. Very well done. Number 8. Can you explain the reason why you lied for? Extra prep in. Very well done. Can you explain the reason why you lied for? Can you explain the reason why you lied? Can you explain the reason why you lied? Very well done. We don't need for. And number 9, I will never forget the moment when the lights went out at. When the lights went out. Extra preposition at, right? Very well done. Okay, here the same goes in this exercise. The house where I live is very old. The house where I live is very old. Okay. Let's do exercise. Guys, could you please just for a minute, I'll be back in 1 minute, and let's practice superlatives. At least one exercise we should do about superlatives that we learned today, right? So be back in just 1 minute. Let me just grab some water. Okay? Okay, I'm back. Exercise 31. The superlatives and that. Match the superlative start of the sentence with the correct defining clause to finish the idea. Remember, we use that to define why it is the best, worst, or most. Okay? This is the best book. Just let me know, guys, if you can see everything properly. This is the best book. B, that I have ever read, right? This is the best book that I have ever read. Number 2, London is the most exciting city. Exactly, Nana. A, right? London is the most exciting city that I have ever visited, right? So you can see that with superlatives, all the sentences, all the defining relative clauses start with that. So when you have superlatives in a sentence and you want to add essential information such as defining relative clause, it usually starts with that. That is the funniest joke. That he has ever told. Great. This is the funniest joke that he has ever told. This is the coldest winter. Well done, Amal. Well done, Nana. That we have ever experienced. Pizza is the most delicious food. Thank you, I girl. Is it E, right? See, that I have ever tasted. Well done. Is it I girl, right? Nana, Amal. Where is it? Yeah. He's the tallest player. F. Nana, I girl, Amal, very well done. That plays for the team. This is the cheapest watch. Exactly. H, right? That I have ever bought. Well done, Nana. Exactly. That I have ever bought. Everest is the highest mountain. I'm sorry, he is the kindest man. That I ever met. Yeah, it's I, right? Everest is the highest mountain. G, that he has ever climbed. This one, sorry. This is the most boring movie. That I have ever watched. This is the most boring movie. Amel, Nana, Elnara. Exactly. That I have ever watched. She's the smartest student. Al, that is in our class. And the last one is, that is the brightest star. J, Mel, J, Elnara. Yeah, that we have ever seen in the sky. So guys, again, when we use superlatives such as the best, the most, funniest, or coldest, or tallest, right? Superlatives such as the best, most, or adjectives ending with est, we usually then use that relative word, that, or the zero relative would be perfect when we add relative clause to the superlatives, that or the zero relative. And usually we have phrases such as I have ever seen, or I have ever watched. Okay, that is, we usually use present perfect, right? Present perfect. What is a present perfect? When we talk about our experience, right? We usually use present perfect. Present perfect needs helping verb have and the third form of the verb, right? For example, eat, ate, eaten is the third form of the verb. Okay, so when we talk about our experience, we usually use present perfect. That is, we need have and the third form of the verb. I've ever seen, I've ever watched, I've ever met, I've ever known, etc. Right? Okay. Well, this live lesson will be uploaded to my YouTube channel. From the beginning of this lesson, I explained everything when it comes to the relative word that. Okay? So you can watch this live lesson on my YouTube from the beginning, where I explain everything about the relative word that, when we can use it, how we can use it, when it is used with superlatives, when we can replace almost all the relative words with that. Okay, you can go to my YouTube channel and watch this live lesson this evening. Okay, all you need to do, just go to my profile, TikTok profile, and you can find there my YouTube channel and my Telegram channel. By the way, today I'm gonna upload dialogues about who when it is used with defining relative clause, and maybe using a dialogue with the superlatives as well. Okay, thank you everyone being here with me. I really appreciate you. Thank you for the likes, for the shares, for the follows, for the gifts. And yeah, our next live lesson will be on Thursday, that is after tomorrow, at 10:30 approximately. Okay, thank you, Nana, being here with us. And see you on Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Have a nice rest of the day, everyone. Take care. You're very welcome, Mel. Take care, guys.